Quadruped breathing with a band wrapped around your forearms. The band here is going to serve as a helpful tool to help you access your lats. Our lats are a big muscle that attaches underneath here below the rib cage and runs all the way down to the base of the pelvis. And it helps to support the back side of our body, which is really important for supporting the abdominal and pelvic floor connection. The band here, I'm placing my hands just a smidge wider than shoulder distance so that I can feel that resistance that's helpful around the band, not that it's trying to exhaust my arms in the process. And then here, my knees are stacked right underneath my hips, wrists are stacked right underneath my shoulders, and I want you to think about pushing your rib cage up and away from the ground. So we're not sinking down to the floor, but we're also not pushing up with a rounded back. So we're keeping that nice long line from our tailbone to the crown of the head, and we're thinking about that press up out of the floor to create space between the shoulder blades. In this grounded position here, I want you to maintain that nice connection as you do your breathing here. So we're gonna inhale, let that belly lower down towards the mat. Exhale, connecting lower abdominals, middle abdominals, upper abdominals towards the spine. And then inhale, release, let the belly lower down towards the mat. Exhale, thinking of that connection, pelvic floor, lower abdominals, all the way up to the upper abdominals. So you'll notice as I keep breathing here, my spine alignment is not changing. So it's staying nice and flat, as if I had a cup of coffee on my spine, and I don't want to tip that over as I'm breathing in and out. And my gaze is down between my two hands, so I'm not looking forward to arch my neck, because then that usually also results in the rest of my spine arching as well. So I want you to keep that nice neutral line here as you keep breathing in and out. Weighted lat pull. So we're gonna take our dumbbell here. I'm using a 10-pound weight. I want you to use a weight that is helpful for you to feel resistance against, but that is doable for approximately 10 to 12 reps. So I'm holding the weight on either side here. My arms are nice and long. I want you to ground your feet down into the floor, and I want you to check in that your pelvis and your rib cage are in a connected position. Connecting meaning in that neutral alignment. So we're not letting that back arch off of the mat and letting my rib cage pop up. And we're also not fully flattening and pressing that lower back into the mat, because that's also not a fully functional position. We have a natural little bit of a curve in our spine, and we want the top of this pelvis to be neutral with the floor. And so that means that my rib cage here is connected to the pelvis. I want you to maintain this while the arms go overhead. So often as the arms continue back overhead, in that more challenging position, there's gonna be a point where the rib cage often likes to pop up and we lose our neutral connection. So I want you to make sure that this stays throughout the entire movement. If that means you have to modify the range that goes overhead, I'd rather you do that and work on your strength to then be able to move the arms further. So we establish our nice starting position here. We inhale to lower those arms back overhead, noticing as the arms go overhead that my rib cage wants to anchor down. I get to this challenging position. You might see my arms shaking a little bit here. You're gonna inhale here, exhale to pull the weight back to your start position. So again, we inhale as we lower back, exhale to bring the weight back up to center. Standing bicep curl. I'm going to show you a trick that I like to use with my feet as I'm placing them in position while doing my bicep curls. Often people set up in parallel with their feet about hip distance apart. I like to do a staggered stance for a few reasons. Staggered stance meaning one foot slightly in front of the other. So I'm turning profile so you can kind of see that a little bit better. So in this staggered stance, I find that helps us to create a more neutral position with our pelvis, which then allows us to be better stacked with our rib cage. If we stand parallel here, I find that a lot of times people will bicep curl and not even notice that they're thrusting their pelvis forward and kind of leaning back in order to get that weight up. When we're in a staggered stance, that allows us to take advantage of our glutes and our core and more of an effective alignment with our whole body, so that as I now curl my bicep, I feel more stable and it's much less natural to thrust my pelvis forward. So the important thing here is that as you do a set of 10 through your circuit, next time you run through your workout, make sure that you switch the feet so you're not always leading with the same side. So I'm gonna keep my right foot in front, left foot behind. I've just got a natural stance so I can have 50% of my weight in each foot. As I stand tall, I'm gonna inhale first, exhale to bring my weights up. Inhale to slowly lower all the way back down to control. As we exhale and lift, being thoughtful that our shoulders aren't rolling forward, we're also not hiking here, and we're making sure that our head doesn't thrust forward. So keeping everything in that nice neutral alignment as we lift up through the biceps, and then inhale to slowly release back down. Rotator cuff external rotation and standing. So you're gonna choose two kind of light weights. You're gonna hold your elbows in a 90-degree position, palms facing up. We're working on opening our hands out to the side to squeeze the shoulder blades together to help to create strength across the upper back to help open up the front of the chest. Often this area becomes tight when we're working through a lot of neck and shoulder challenges, as well as carrying a lot of little ones throughout the day and breastfeeding. This especially becomes really tight. So we want to work on strengthening that upper back for all of the work that you're doing throughout the day, and this is a great place to start. So we're going to have both hands here. We're going to inhale to prepare, exhale to open. Squeeze those shoulder blades together, being thoughtful that we're not hiking the shoulders up in the process. Think long through the elbows and down towards the floor. Inhale to return. Exhale to open and return. I'm going to turn to the side so you can also see here my pelvis and my rib cage are staying stacked. So as we open here, we want to make sure that we're not thrusting forward with our rib cage or our head. In order to do that, those need to stay stacked back over our heels, so it's just the opening that's happening here at my arms. You can also take a staggered stance approach here if that's helpful for you to keep your rib cage stacked better over your pelvis, so that as you open, again, it's less natural to thrust forward because we're in that better staggered stance. Hip hinge rows. So you're gonna start with a helpful, challenging weight. You're gonna bring your feet so that they're about shoulder distance apart. And then I want you to hinge at your hip to sit back so that your torso comes down towards the floor on a nice long angle. So we wanna make sure that we're not arching here. We're also not rounding the spine, but we're keeping a nice neutral position. Again, connecting rib cage to the front of the pelvis. Our arms are gonna stay long here. Our gaze stays looking down at the floor, so we're not looking up to extend our neck, but keeping that nice neutral. You're gonna inhale here, exhale to pull the elbows straight back, squeeze the shoulder blades together, and then slowly release the arms back down with control. Exhale to pull. Squeeze those shoulder blades, keep the elbows close to the rib cage, and then slowly release. You'll notice as you're working the upper back here, you're also gonna feel some work in your seat because our glutes here are helping to keep this nice long connection through the back line of the body while we continue to work the upper back. If it's too challenging to stay in this position for the entire set, feel free to pull and then stand tall in between each rep until you build up more endurance across that back line in order to support through the entire set.